Hello and welcome to Scale Car Garage. Well, did something a little different. I was actually able to catch up with Max of Max Models. Max Models is a YouTube channel, which is really, if you haven't checked it out, please do. I'll leave it the URL in the description. But Max has been a model builder, well, since he was very young, and really knows a lot about the model companies that we've all come to know and love. And these model companies produced not only airplane models, which Max is particularly fond of, as you'll see, but also these companies produce the models that we all enjoy: cars, boats, ships, civilian aircraft, civilian cars. Anyway, I'll stop talking. So here is our conversation. I have to give you a bit of an apology. We did have some connectivity issues, so there may be some cuts that look a bit odd, but that's the challenge sometimes with technology. But I hope you enjoy listening to our conversation as much as I enjoyed having the conversation with Max. So without further ado, here we are, the first coffee conversation here on Scale Car Garage.
There I am.
Hey, well, first of all, great to actually talk to you in real time and real flesh.
Thank you. You too. Now that I see myself on this thing, I realized, to paraphrase, if you ever used to watch Third Rock from the Sun with John Lithgow.
Yeah.
My God, I'm gorgeous.
Well, never mind. I saw your headshot in your shed. Did you try to do some acting at some point or something?
Oh, you saw? Oh my God, you are perceptive.
You know what? It's part of the nerd gene, right? You look at like every little thing.
I was an actor for a while. First off, and I'm sure half the people watching this will go, "Oh yeah, because we're all kind of, like you say, it's a gene." Even as a kid, I wanted to be a policeman, a soldier, a pilot, a skydiver, and an actor.
Wow. So you did most of that then.
I like writing too. And I never said I was good at any of it.
You don't have to be good. You just got to do it. You just got to do it.
And I managed to actually do everything. Not well, but one thing I've learned is, as long as you don't hang around people who really know what they're doing, you can impress people with mediocre performance in fields they're not familiar with.
Well, let me tell you, one of my heroes is the guy who wrote The Princess Bride.
I actually read the book by Carrie Elways.
It's called As You Wish.
As You Wish.
Yes.
Because I read every book on the making of movies and stuff. I also am a failed stand-up comedian. So I had to fall back on flying. The only thing I ever did.
Well, I think this is why we get along, because I was in Second City for 2 years in Toronto here.
Oh, I've got to go find some of your stuff now.
Oh no! I was in their workshop program, and then and then when I came out, because I did it in high school, it was really funny, because I was an actor as well, and my father was in insurance. He was an underwriter, so the only thing that mattered to him was, did you make any money?
Yeah.
Right. So
Dad ran a hardware store. Very practical people.
He was so impressed when I got paid for my first acting gig. He actually photocopied my check, which I still have.
Oh, God bless him.
I think this is why we get along. I can see you're very comfortable in front of the camera, and now you're.
Perhaps a little too much so. I'm sitting there picking my ears, and whatever.
No, well, first of all, the first things first, though, how's your physiotherapy coming along?
Oh, very well, actually. I can't complain. Everybody's happy with it. The two big landmarks to me were when I would forget my cane, which I did walking in here, because
that's a good thing. I mean, you're walking without it then.
Yeah, only short distances, and when my wife's not around, because when she's like, because you occasionally might need it for balance. I mean, it's her job to take care of me, and she's good at it. She certainly takes better care of me than I take care of myself, which is evident if you could see a full body shot. But the other thing was, and obviously, it's a thing no one talks about. When you can go to the restroom normally, that's not a small thing. Well, no. You're as proud of the day you got rid of your diapers, But 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 so I hope to be back to work around the 1st of September.
Now,
The,
do you still fly, or what do you do?
no, yeah, I'm a captain. I can't say the airline because I don't have permission to represent them.
Yep.
But I'm not American Airlines. I'm with a major American airline flying a 100-seat jet.
Okay, well, my uncle flew for Air Canada for 45 years.
Oh, what do you fly?
His favorite airplane, believe it or not, was an L-1011.
I love the L-1011.
He loved it. And his second favorite was 747-400 series.
Yeah, it's I know a lot of guys that flew the 400 at companies, these freight companies.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, you were a captain on a 74. What are you doing here? And he's kind of like, I don't want to mention names so we don't get any trouble, but not UPS or FedEx, they're top dollar operations. But a lot of these, let's just call them slightly more obscure companies, they're lucky to crack 6 figures. Like, man, I know regional jet captains that are making, $100,000 a year, and they were barely making that as captains in 744-400s flying these horrible schedules.
Yeah, and so when he had seniority, he refused to fly any Airbus equipment at all. He didn't like it.
That makes up a chunk of our airline, but I'm not on the bus. I'm on the Embraer 190.
Yeah, because he was a stick and rudder guy. Like his first gig was lands and forests here in Canada.
Yeah.
So when he used to take my dad on fishing trips, they took, I don't know, it was like a Cessna 170 or a 180, and somehow they landed in this obscure lake and the batteries went flat, so they couldn't take off. So my father was actually, and the way it's too bad he's not around because he told the story better than I did, but my dad thought, this is it, we're gonna die in this lake. So my uncle gets up on the wing with a lighter and starts doing SOS just as the sun's falling. And my dad went up to him and he said, this is not the way to die. And
well, you're in Canada, right?
Yeah.
So the nightfall up there in the winter, that's not that. So I'm in Florida. It's kind of like, what are you talking about? You have to spend the night outside? And
no, this was in the
mosquitoes. They're fighting off polar bears.
Yeah, well, that's the one thing you learn after camping in the woods, that everything from a mosquito to a bear sees you as food.
Oh yeah,
right.
You're a self-propelled protein.
Exactly. So there's my uncle doing this on top of the wing. Sure enough, around 6 the next morning, because they slept in the plane, lands and forest landed, gave him a boost, and all I can say is my uncle never let my father sort of off the hook on that one.
I'll bet. There are certain things you will do that you'll be reminded of past the grave.
Absolutely. And I actually worked for BA. I helped launch their frequent flyer program here in Canada.
Wow. Our CEO, well, I'm not identifying my airline, but I'm giving enough information. Okay.
All right.
But our CEO was a BA guy before he came and took our
well, and that was back in '93 when they went from being a Crown Corporation to being a public corporation.
Yeah, privatized.
But what a great company! I mean, it was.
Have you seen that BA commercial where they go through some of the aircraft from their past? It starts off with a biplane and goes all the way up to the Concorde, and it kind of just fades from one to the other. And I'm like, you see, that's how you make a commercial. That's better than those movies I've seen.
I don't know if you can see it here on my shelf, but there's a BA pewter mug that I got when I left the company, and those things sticking up, that's the only thing I got from Concorde, which is stir sticks.
My family had a pack, and we had it since I was a child. I'm sure one of my siblings has it, but it was a red pack of Lark cigarettes.
Oh yeah.
That came off of Air Force One. And it had a little, they were actually manufactured inside the cellophane as a piece of paper said, this came from Air Force One with the presidential seal. And man, when guests would come over, we would show that like it was a holy grail. Don't touch, just look.
Well, you'll love this. When I was working for the company, our sales rep from Boeing took us out to lunch. Okay, now this woman worked on commission.
Oh wow.
So she was buying lunch, and she told us the story about how the new Air Force One was chosen, because that's when they went to the 747-400 series. And she said they were in, I guess it's like around Seattle or in Seattle.
They're in Seattle, yeah. Well, in Renton, just outside Seattle. So
she said the Secret Service came in unannounced, went to the line, said we want that one and that one. They took them away. She said, I don't know what they did to those airplanes, but they were just gone.
That makes sense because surprise keeps people from being able to plan treachery because some long-term planner in the factory might do something that only he knows about that wouldn't get detected. And I also, my master's degree is on aviation science and aviation security. Well, if you're going to sip, I'm going to sip.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, I thought we were supposed to have coffee, so I got
Yeah,
one.
coffee.
Now, I
This
got
is
it.
my Alaska mug that I got when I was in, I've been to Alaska several times. I got that one, well, some little town outside Anchorage. Anyway.
I went foo-foo shishi. I saw your last video. Sorry, I'm having a cappuccino.
Man, I just, that's all, it's all in fun, man. I was the sugar and cream kid forever. And, a dear friend of mine, he's in his 80s now, but he can still outrun me, which ain't saying a lot, but, he, 20 years in the Army, 20 years in the local police department, and still going strong. And I mean, this guy is just old school hardcore, a man of the 50s, right? And we're at the airport one day because my hangout was the local airport where I learned to fly in Quincy, Florida, a little 3,000-foot strip. And of course, the coffee pot, you drop a quarter and make your own coffee, but I'm putting all that stuff in it. He's got that gravelly voice, you know. Like, what are you put all that boo stuff in there for? Yeah, you're supposed to drink coffee. He's the kind of guy that drinks coffee at 8:30 p.m. and is asleep by 9, you know. And I was like, it was just, when somebody does that, when the right person does that at the right time, it just hits that little circuit breaker in your brain. You're like, okay, I'm not doing that anymore. It's like a snake bite. You know?
Yeah, pretty much.
But, when I was young, I mean, you know, growing up, like a lot of kids, I built all this. You have to remember, I'm from the American Deep South, which is a very strong military tradition. My dad was an Air Force mechanic.
I was going to ask you about that. That he flew,
and,
right?
Yeah. Well, he was a mechanic.
Oh, mechanic.
And it's one of those things. When he joined the Army Air Force, okay, because we still have his brown Ike jacket with the Army stripes. And he was in during the transition, and he was, I think he was supposed to go to Hawaii, and he'd finished up at Chinook Field. That picture, if you look at the videos, I show the WB-29 model built in that photo behind him. That's his graduating class at Chinook Field, and I think they were scheduled to go to Hawaii, and then the Korean War broke out. So it was everything suddenly went full throttle Cold War, and they sent him to Fairbanks, Alaska, to Eielson Air Force Base, which is not Hawaii. It's not even a reasonable facsimile of Hawaii, and so he spent his time up there, and I totally forgot where I was going with this.
Oh, you're talking about your dad in the Air Force, yeah.
Oh yeah. So he definitely suffered, you know. I mean, you know, but we had a strong military tradition. My older brother's a retired Air Force colonel. My younger brother was a navigator. He was Operation Just Cause, flying an unarmed Starlifter down the middle of a battlefield in a straight line so they could parachute a vehicle out that Sheridan 551 Sheridan. So anyway, we all, you know, grew up on John Wayne, and you know, and my favorite movie star is Jimmy Stewart. Not only because I love his movies, but also because of his real life exploits.
Well, he was a real pilot too.
Oh, hardcore. Yeah. One of my videos, I found some photos online of him and Henry Fonda. They were buddies. They both built and flew model airplanes.
Right.
And he's out there in the deserts of California with this, and it's several pictures of the airplane with this big model like a Stinson. And the girl standing behind him in the hat, just giving him that "Are we done yet?" look, is Olivia de Havilland.
Right.
For anyone under 40, they were big deals in the day. Just consider the Scarlett Johansson.
Well, they still are. I mean, it was the de Havilland family that had de Havilland Aircraft.
Yep. That's correct. She was related to the family. And anyway, so I knew I was going to go in the service. That was just, and I thought I'd be a career man. But we were kind of an Air Force family. But when I was in military school in Alabama, when I was about 14, for one of our veteran days or something, the Army brought in a Cobra, a Huey, and a OH-58 to land in the parade ground, just, you know, as a recruitment tool. And it worked because I met some of the pilots and I'm like, you're a what? He goes, I'm a warrant officer. And what the heck is a warrant officer?
Well, that's the highest non-com you can be, right?
Well, actually, no. That's a common misconception. And
Oh, okay.
for those who are uninitiated, I'll say it real quick. You have your enlisted grades in the American military. Goes E1 to E9, enlisted 1 to enlisted 9, and of course you have the O grades, the officers, O1, second lieutenant, all the way up to general. The warrant, W1, there used to be W1 to W4. I believe they created W5. You have a warrant commission, which is its own thing. You are classified as a commissioned officer. You rate a salute. You have the bar on your shoulder with the little black dots in it. So from 10 feet away, you look like a first lieutenant. But the warrant commission is different. And I'm probably wrong on this. I think the warrant commission can be issued by the Army, whereas a commissioned officer's commission has to be issued by Congress. And I'm probably wrong on that, but the warrant grades were developed specifically for people with highly trained specialties that did not necessarily hold command positions, like a helicopter pilot. In fact, probably most of the warrants in the Army helicopter are helicopter pilots. But they also have them in Criminal Investigation Division, CID. They have them in supply, physicians' assistants. You know, more than a paramedic, less than a doctor, a little less than a nurse. In fact, each infantry battalion is supposed to have a warrant PA to work as the senior medic. And every warrant I've ever known said it's the greatest rank on earth because you get all the privilege of an officer without all the responsibility or sweating promotion. Don't get in trouble, and the kind of promotions and they can make as much as a major or maybe even a lieutenant colonel, especially with flight pay. And all the chopper pilots who were warrants, as long as they could hold on to a medical, they could fly their whole 20 years. They didn't have to go to command school. They didn't have to. They just had to go out and fly the chopper.
Now,
Which is one reason the Army has so many highly proficient helicopter pilots, because in the other services, the general rule is if you want to get past captain as a commissioned officer, you got to get out of the cockpit, go take a ground assignment, a staff assignment. If you stay in the cockpit, you'll probably never get past major. I know a couple of retired majors who was like, we just want to keep flying, so they sacrificed like colonel or colonel for it. And that's just, and I understand the military needs to train future leaders. So
now, did you fly rotary wing, or did you?
No, what I did was when I learned about that program and that it did not require a college degree, because Max is always looking for the shortcut. But I also like the type of flying. You know, the idea of sitting staring out a windshield at 30,000 feet when you're 14 years old is pretty boring. The idea, you know, flying through the treetops at 100 knots, you know, sounds fun until you actually do it. So, I mean, it is fun, but you also realize there's no air conditioner, and wars tend to be fought in really hot, humid areas. And you're wearing 3 layers of Nomex. And it's also, when you're that close to the ground, it's a really dangerous environment because anything that can bite you can bite you.
Yeah.
But I decided I'm going to go be an Army helicopter pilot, so I enlisted in the Army while I was still in high school. And
okay, a little bit of a technical glitch. Please continue. So you're saying?
No worries. I turned off. While we were gone, I put my phone in airplane mode, so it's just Wi-Fi. I don't know if it was interfering on my end.
No worries.
But anyway, I joined the Army, went in the infantry. I didn't care because I was going to be a helicopter pilot, and I got selected for flight school. But my hobby while I was in the Army was skydiving, and
I got to tell you though, I've been told, especially by my uncle who was a pilot, anybody who jumps out of a perfectly good airplane is an idiot.
Anybody that's seen a jump plane knows they are not perfectly good. I wouldn't get in one of those things without a parachute. But the jump plane is the last thing an airplane does before it becomes a mobile home. They are worn out and running. Now, we were lucky. We were an Army club, so the military provided us helicopters, so we were spoiled rotten. Yeah, well, they're right, though. I paid for that. I had an accident, and yes, my parachute opened fine. It was a collision with another jumper close to the ground, which wrapped our canopies. And a couple of broken legs, 8 weeks in the hospital. Well, the Army requires you to wait 6 months after a broken bone to take a flight physical because they want to make sure there's no complications.
Right.
My bones were fine, but an astigmatism in my eye had advanced just enough. Now, you got to remember, this is the post-Vietnam era. The Army had helicopter pilots at the wazoo. It was not uncommon at Fort Campbell. I was in the 101st Airborne Division at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, and it's not uncommon at that time to see staff sergeants with pilots' wings because they had been warrants in Vietnam and after the war, or even commissioned officers. And after the war, it was a RIF, a reduction in force. It's get out or become an enlisted man. So you'd see guys with a chest full of medals and badges wearing, sergeant stripes.
So hang on, you were 101 Airborne?
Mm-hmm. Well, 150 pounds ago, when I was young and immortal.
That's quite the group to be part of.
It was, but I have to make something clear that this is the kind of thing you don't normally tell people because like, yeah, that's right, I was on the 101st. This is not the 101st of World War II. This is not the Currahee crowd. I guess it was in the late 60s, early 70s, the Army was pushing the air mobile concept helicopters.
Yeah, well, they tried the jetpacks. They didn't work too well.
Oh my God! Don't even get me started on that. But there were so many jokes about that. But what happened was I think it was First Air Cav. First Air Cavalry was the first ones to go fully air mobile, and they said, hey, this concept works because parachutes can get soldiers into the battlefield, but they can't get them out, can't move them around. Right. That's a one and done kind of deal. So the 101st took the air mobile concept and advanced what was called air assault, which is sort of a magnum version of the air mobile concept. And they took most of the division off jump status, and we did not rate jump pay or flight pay or anything like that. And I had the little wings of the helicopter on them. We used to call the wop wop wings, imitation airborne. Now, here's where the confusion sets in. It sounds like semantics, but it's not. The 82nd Airborne Division are paratroopers that use parachutes.
Okay.
First are air assault, but they're both airborne in that they arrive by air. Actually, the 101st was not always a fully paratrooper group either. My battalions, which back in World War II, the regimental system, 327th, they were glider troops. They called them glider riders. And ironically, the Army thought gliders would be an improvement over parachutes. And during the war, paratroopers averaged a 2 to 3% accident rate per jump. Glider troops was above 10%. Because when a glider cracked up, it took out 7, 8, 10 guys.
Yeah.
And that's how they killed that general, which if you saw Saving Private Ryan, they touch on that.
That was the Jeep. And that would happen quite often.
That's right. And physics doesn't care what rank you are.
No.
But I got selected to flight school, had the parachute accident. The astigmatism kept me out at the last minute, which of course was just a soul crusher. And I had to finish my stint in the infantry. And so when I got out, I was like, okay, I'm going to do it the old way, but flying's expensive. So I became a police officer to pay for my flying. And wow. I was a single guy back then. I could dump all my money. I was just handing my paycheck to the local FBO.
So where were you schooling out of if you were in Washington?
Okay, because that's a good point. Clearly, you're familiar with the situation up there.
Because a lot of people, including JFK Jr., come up to Toronto.
Yeah. What happened was DC. Of course, back then, before 9/11, all that stuff, there were a lot of little airfields. College Park, the oldest continuously operating airport in America, is there. Right. And on the Maryland side, I was down at there are two airports almost side by side. In fact, the traffic patterns almost overlap. Friendly Air Park, or Prince George's County Air Park, and Clinton Field, Clinton Hyde. And I found this little mom and pop Part 91 rental school, / rental operation, run by a guy named Larry DeAngelis, who was a retired Eastern Elton 11 captain, by the way. Ah. And Larry would give you credit. He was an old on a handshake kind of guy. And he was also designated examiner, which meant you could take the check rides right there. And he and his wife ran the operation, and I just got my tickets as money was available. I was like, well, if you want to run up a tab, that's okay. So I got all my tickets knocked out, wound up leaving the police department unexpectedly, and that's a long story in itself, but probably the best thing that ever happened to me. because I was thinking about giving up police work and staying in law enforcement, just because this is back when all the mergers, pilots were losing their jobs left and right. You couldn't get a job as an airline pilot because all the Vietnam guys are still flying, and the airlines were hurting post-deregulation. And but anyway, I went ahead and left the department and started flying for Larry as a flight instructor for a short time. Got my first little corporate job, and I got by on $15,000-$20,000 a year for the next 5 years. You know, working as a flight instructor because no one was hiring. Went back to college. That was important. I decided, you know, I'm going to go back to college, and so I flight instructed part time and delivered pizza and worked as a security guard while in college, which helps explain my B average. And,
Well, you know what? Luckily, they don't put your average on your degree, so not to worry.
yeah, that's a true. As they said, was the guy. What do they say? What's the guy who graduated? What do they call the guy who graduates at the bottom of his medical school class? Doctor.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they don't tell you where he came in his class. It doesn't matter.
But anyway, so you know, I eventually the economy picked up. I built some time. I was working I got my degree in information systems management and was working as a computer nerd. Was unhappy, and I said, you know what? I'd rather be poor and happy than making good money and miserable. And I went to go fly charters and stuff, and I went from $30,000 a year back to $15,000 a year, but my spine didn't tense up walking through the front door. And I go, God, here we go again. And that's when I got into stand-up comedy and stuff and everything.
So did you stand up in the East Coast, like in the Boston area? Or?
No, I just did like open mic nights, total amateur hour. And the good thing about living off starvation wages is I found losing weight. Then Florida, they shoot a lot of movies in Florida, and a lot of TV commercials and stuff are shot down here. And Jacksonville is actually fairly popular because we have a lot of different kinds of terrain. It's so cheap to shoot here. Somebody was I met a lot of production people, and it's nice to meet actors and celebrities. It really is, and I got to don't talk to the principal.
Yeah, well, they have to talk to you.
You extras, you stay over there. And they just herd us like cattle. You're wearing like Army general and Navy admiral uniforms, being treated like over there, kid. When I got to be a couple of days down in Orlando at Universal doing MGM doing From the Earth to the Moon. I'm episode 8. Okay. And I counted and got like 14 seconds of FaceTime. It's the episode about Apollo 13. Anyway, you won't miss me. I'm one of the mission operator controllers on this here. It's like, oh yeah, that's him.
But you got paid though, right?
Yep. Got $50 for the first 8 hours, and then I think $10 or $15 an hour for each hour after that.
See, that's why
it came out of unemployment.
Well, I was going to say that's why they call it the entertainment business. What we're doing right now is entertainment.
And I learned so much in just a few movies, but the fun people to talk to, the ones that you just never gets old, of course, are the operations people, the cameramen and
the grips, the sound guys, the light guys.
Yeah. I didn't even know what a grip was before that. I'm making grip anything. What do you call it a gaffer? See this black tape? I can stick anything to anything. That's gaffing tape.
To this day, if I go to see a movie or even rent one or like watch something, I got to know who the best boy is.
The best boy. And apparently that goes back to the early days of, he's my best boy. And
exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So that's like, what is a best boy? He's whatever they need him to be at that point.
Exactly.
And the thing that really gobsmacked me was we go into the set and they set up mission control. Man, they made some really authentic stuff here. They even gave it the patina of old age. And one of the props guys like, dude, NASA gave us this stuff. These are the actual consoles. Yep. I'm like, look, I'm sitting where real mokers used to sit. I turn around, there's a bunch of books behind a pull out, and it's a Gemini mission manual.
Wow.
From an old and it's a Xerox because they used old Xerox machines to make copies. And I'm like, I'm trying to tuck that under my jacket, but like, don't even.
Well, you'd love it up here. You'd love it up here because in Downsview, where the McDonnell Douglas, I guess, factory and refit place was, they still have file cabinets with AV Row on them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I had,
Where's my 504 bioplane and my 1.5? Well, it's 1.5 strutter with a sop with, but still.
well, that was from the Canuck and Arrow days.
CF 100 or 101 CF
CF
100.
100, CF 100, yeah, yeah.
Well, since we just transitioned to that, let me tell you, there are a couple airplanes that were never made that broke my heart, and the CF 105 is definitely one of them.
Well, join the club. I mean, it's really interesting. I got to meet James. Is it James Floyd who was the lead engineer?
I don't know, but that's okay.
Yeah, and he talked about how there was people don't realize this. There was no prototype. They went straight to production.
Right.
And Jan Zarakowski, which is interesting. I mean, my wife's not here, so I can talk about this. One of the girls, one of the girls I dated in university when I met her, her father was the principal test pilot for the CF 100. He was introduced to his wife, who was Czechoslovakian, by Jan Zarakowski.
Oh.
And apparently, like he would talk about the CF 100 all day. You say the word arrow, he would turn red and storm out of the room. But I got him to talk about it once. And what he talked about too, the only thing that Zarakowski changed after the first flight was, I think it was the altimeter that he wanted a little higher so he could see it in his peripheral vision.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Yeah, because that's just when they were starting to get into ergonomics. I've flown some airplanes that were made in the 50s that had a scan that looked like you were chasing a fly around the room because the attitude indicator's here, the compass is down there. I mean, like, who put this nightmare together? And why is the vertical speed indicator front and center? That's the last thing I need right now.
Well, the other thing too is it was the first fly-by-wire aircraft, and that wasn't because they were trying to show up. They had to do that because, you know, when you move a surface portion of or a control surface, that has an exponential effect on the aircraft.
It had to have electronic gain so that it could
have to have something between the human and the machine.
You're another. When you get up to those speeds, you're in another world. Of the physics change, and you can't just get away with push pull. It just doesn't work.
No.
Just like the flying tail put the F-86 ahead for a long time, and a lot of people don't realize that was essentially automated.
Right.
They had to have that little primitive gun ranging computer in the nose because of the speeds they were flying at. You just couldn't eyeball it like even the World War II gun sights had a certain amount of analog, computing power built into them.
Right.
But
you're right about the physics. I mean, for example, like people, if you ever see the Concorde that's at Heathrow, make sure you go through the cockpit, because in the panels where the flight engineer is, there's a hack that's stuck in there, because the fuselage would extend about 3.5 inches. On the last flight, as they were descending into Heathrow, the flight engineer took his hat and stuck it in between the gap, and it's there forever.
Oh, that's wonderful.
That's cool. Yeah.
There was that's like the Tu-4, the Russian copy of the B-29.
Yeah.
Stalin. There's a lot of stories about that, but a couple of people looked at them and go, "What are these patches for?" They'd made such a faithful copy that they had put bullet hole patches on it from the airplane they copied it from. I mean, in Stalinist Russia, when you're told to do something, you just freaking did it. You by chance watch The Mandalorian?
Yes. Yeah.
The motorcycle stormtroopers, the speeder stormtroopers, and they got Baby Yoda in the bag, and he's kind of like, "What? Take a look at." "No, I ain't looking. I don't ask." And I was like, "There's a guy that's Stalinist Russia for you. I don't ask questions. I just do what I'm told." And but the CF-105, it's not like I really expect to get into a Canadian bar fight, but I used to go to Montreal and Toronto a lot when I was at the regionals, and I really miss going there. It was one of my favorite places to go, except obviously in the winter.
Sorry to interrupt, but were you ever in the STAR program in the military?
STAR program? No.
No, okay, because my wife. Okay, so here's a little interesting tidbit for you that you mentioned up here in Canada. We have it was originally called the NATO Officers Training College. So there's a mansion in Toronto that was used during World War II to train RAF, RCAF, and USAAF officers.
Okay.
It was one of the best land deals that the federal government here in Canada ever made. It was built in 1914 at a cost of $1.14 million. This thing is
$14 about $1 billion today.
right, and it's massive. It has secret compartments, secret passageways. It's amazing. But what happened? Yeah, and what happened was the patriarch and the matriarch of the family died during the Depression. The family couldn't settle on the estate, so the only entity that had enough money to buy it was the federal government, and they paid $385,000 for it. And then turned it into a training facility during World War II. So a good friend of mine in university, his dad was a master warrant officer. That's why I asked you about the warrant. So he got us jobs as university kids to be bar staff at this training facility. Now the bar, just to show you, the bar took 5 people to work, and we had lots of room. It was huge. Okay, there was an envoy from the U.S. Marine Corps who lived there 24/7. And we did mess dinners. Oh, you talk about James Bond stuff. So we did a mess dinner with the U.S. Marine Corps and Canadian Airborne. Now, the Canadian Airborne was abolished because of what they did in Somalia. You know that story.
This is faintly ringing a bell.
Okay, and they're not. They still exist. They're called the J2Fs. These are the guys who apparently hold the world record for sniping.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So anyway, but these guys were nuts. Okay, absolutely. So we do the mess dinner. We get to the bar to start serving, and of course, you know, the U.S. Marine Corps folks are all in their dress whites. They ordered a round of B-52s, a spool of thread, and a needle. Okay, sir. So I jump up. I scrounge a spool of thread and a needle. They go around the bar, airborne Marine, airborne Marine, airborne Marine. The Marine at the head of the bar takes the needle, threads it through their cheeks, all the way around the bar, and they do a shot to solidarity.
I had a feeling it was going to something like this was going to happen.
This was 1995, or sorry, 1984, 85. They didn't know what AIDS was yet. These guys.
And you wonder where they got the idea in Game of Thrones for the Dothraki.
Yeah. Now, and what was really funny too, because my wife thankfully looks better than I do. But as we're setting up the bar, this Marine colonel comes up to my wife and goes, "What do y'all want to drink?" His name. No, this is not a word of a lie. He was from Georgia. His name was.
No, I had known so many Marines. I'm like, I can see 100 Marines to that voice. So.
Wait for it. His name was Colonel Strange. I'm not lying. So
the guy I used to babysit for, his name was Bill Strange. So that's
there you go.
And I worked for an instructor named Ernie Strange. So more common name than you realize.
There you go. So we went up to the whole bar side. What do y'all want to drink? And of course we could drink our faces off, but we didn't because we had work to do. So I said, okay, I'll have a Coke. My wife said, I'll have an orange juice. He went,
tells you something when the teenagers are the responsible ones.
Yeah. And he goes, what are you, a bunch of effing Mormons? Puts $10 on the bar and walks away.
Yeah, I can see that. Because no one ever got any secrets betrayed at a bar full of soldiers.
No.
Well,
the other one last thing. The other good thing that you had 437 Squadron that flew out of Trenton, Ontario here. Mm-hmm. And all they really were was a delivery for booze. We would get shipments of.
And it's God's work they're doing.
Yeah, exactly. German beer, German wine, and like all without any sort of tariff tickers on it. And then at the end of the night, right, because they didn't have cooks there, they had chefs. So we ate whatever they ate. So you had Chateaubriand, Coquille Saint-Jacques. Oh yeah, it was just amazing. And then whatever was left over, of course, being starving university kids, here, take it. But
I have to make this. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say one last thing. So because it was federal property, it didn't have a closing hour. So we would work sometimes from 6 in the evening till 7 the next morning. And it was a stand-up bar. It would look like a battlefield. And occasionally you would have to look down and make sure that you found someone's tooth. Put it in
Anybody missing a molar? Got a molar here.
Put it in a shop. Exactly. And when the officer woke up, excuse me, sir, this is yours. Oh, thank you very much. And if the commanding officer was still standing, you had to serve him.
There you go. These days, of course, in the American military anyway, even the most minor alcohol violation, your career is over.
Yeah.
Those are what they used to say. We used to jump out of planes and eat snakes. Now we jump off wall lockers and eat earthworms.
You're saying about the 105. Sorry.
Oh yeah, no. I mean, I just want to cite. We talked about so much. I keep these random thoughts. I keep, but you never get back. You never loop back to the. Well, the 105 though. I'm in a bar in Canada. I did my training on the Canadair regional jet that I flew for a few years. It was the first jet I was a captain on in Montreal at Dorval.
Yep.
And and then I flew up there for years and with a regional airline that went out. And I did a lot of overnights in Toronto and a lot in Montreal. And I loved them both because I learned real quick in Canada, there's no bad food. I mean, because like you said, the French, especially in Montreal, the damn French chefs are.
Oh,
I mean, everything.
Montreal's great. Yeah.
Yeah. You've got some of the most beautiful women, but you also have the best dressed homeless people and beggars I've ever seen. And I'm not joking. I'm walking down the streets of Montreal, and there would be these people with a little tray just sitting there, but they were nicely dressed.
Yeah.
And I was kind of like,
they're also, and even to today,
they were well groomed and hygiened. I mean, I was like, my God, American bums have really got to take some notes here, man. Up their game. Here's an extra loony for you, just for presenting yourself well and a little professionalism. But there was a convenience. The only thing that crushed me about Montreal, just broke my spirit, was I'm in training and every night's back to study. And there was a convenience store across from we stayed at the Le Montfort Hotel.
Oh, yeah.
And across the street, there was a convenience store. And of course, Canadian convenience stores are like small grocery stores. They're very nicely stocked. And, or maybe it was actually the real grocery store I was going because it was groceries. Anyway, I grabbed a couple of Blue Moons, and as I'm checking out, the lady takes them out of the tray, slides them aside because they had some kind of blue law there. You couldn't buy on Sunday or something.
That was a while ago. That's all changed now. Yeah.
Oh, well, good. Then I can go back to Canada now. They probably squashed that warrant. But I was like, ah! And of course, the only minor disappointment was I met a couple of RCMP, and I'm like, hey, where's the red surge jacket and the campaign hat? Because they're wearing their gray and blue. He's like a regular cop. There's nothing special about you, you know.
Well, at least you didn't ask them to try and sing.
Oh God, I didn't want to get beaten, you know. The last thing I ever want to say is, yeah, I got my ass kicked by Canadian police. You know, Canadians have such a reputation for being nice people. I don't care if I get hit by a truck. To just admit you got beat up in Canada is like, for an American, it's like, oh my God.
Unless you learn
back.
Max, unless you learn how to skate, it ain't gonna happen.
Oh my God, I can't even hardly roller skate. You put me on ice. There's a great comedian, the late John Pinette.
Yeah,
who did the thing about he was up in Canada. They tried to learn to ice skate. And they push him, and he can't stop. He basically sees his poor Canadian family out getting beaver tail or some kind of thing they serve out on the ice, but basically fried dough on a stick. I'm like, I'm there. He did a whole routine about that. It was really good. But anyway, I'm in this bar. I'm out flying the line now, and you know, I don't go to work in the afternoon, so I can have a couple of beers. And another thing I like about Canada is Canadians are like Brits and Aussies in that and I think it's kind of the European and Crown thing, but they almost have a genetic love of aviation.
Oh yeah.
You'll find a 9-year-old British boy with better aircraft knowledge than, you know, some guys I fly the line with.
Well, and to your point, that's why we're still upset about the Arrow.
Well, that's where this goes. This is about the closest I ever got to getting a firefight in Canada. I was saved by a Canadian. We're talking about airplanes, and this one guy, and of course the 105 comes up, which is like, it's like they're cocked, you know. It's like, bring up airplanes, you know. We're going to talk about the Arrow today. This guy starts like, you know, well, you know, it's you Yanks that canceled it, and I was kind of like, yeah, that's fair. You know, there was definitely some Washington skullduggery on that, because that airplane, I will tell you, in my humble tinfoil hat opinion, what killed the CF-105 was the minute the U.S. Air Force showed interest in it. And every American defense contractor, from General Dynamics to Boeing, and we put them all together, it's got to be 15, 20 senators they got on the unofficial payroll. They were burning up telephone lines to Washington, D.C.
Well, there was a journalist named June Callwood who has since passed, but she followed the life of not only the Arrow, but the Iroquois engine, which was really pivotal to the way that airplane performed. She lived in Malton, right by Avro, She swore till her dying day that the night before Black Tuesday, she heard one take off.
I hope so. I like to think there's one in a
I like to
bunker
think of
somewhere,
that too, man. Yeah.
you know. Well, you do know that even though we retired the F-117 Stealth some time back, that they have been seen flying on rare occasion. They went into storage long term.
Yeah.
But unlike the airplanes at Motham that get pickled, they're actually in climate control, and apparently they run them once in a while, just because you never know when just to keep the asset on tap.
Well, that's the worst thing you can do to even a subsonic airplane is let it sit.
Yeah, any piece of machinery, it's true. But in other words, the asset it's technically off the books, but it's there's a few of them if they needed them. And everybody's like, well, why do you need it when you got the B2? I'm like, dude, you never know what's going to happen, and you've already paid for it.
Well, not only that, the SR-71 is still kicking around too, from what I understand.
Well, that rumor flies, and so does the whole thing about Aurora. And I don't know. I mean, I certainly have no inside track. The irony is that, do you know that the old A-12, the predecessor to the 71, was actually a skosh faster? You could get a little bit higher.
Yeah, well, it was lighter, wasn't it?
And partly because it had a smaller chine on it, and it was a single pilot. There was nobody in the back.
Yeah.
And up at those altitudes, that matters.
My understanding, the most important thing of that aircraft is managing how your fuel gets burned off, because there are 6 tanks, and if you screw up the CG on that, you're in deep trouble.
I was talking to a long time when the internet was new. I was chatting with a fellow, Phil. Gosh, what was his last name? Not Phil.
Well, okay, I'm going to ask you this, but I know you know the answer. But you know the thing about cut ties. You know that?
Oh man, I know this, but I can't remember. It's like I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So when you take your first solo flight as an SR-71 pilot, they used to fly out of Japan. You had to wear a tie, the shittiest tie you could find. And when you got out of the airplane, the first thing that happened as you came on the tarmac was they cut your tie and they hang it up. And now you're an SR-71 pilot. It's
kind of like cutting the back out of your T-shirt when you solo a plane.
Right.
But the Arrow is just, I think, one of the greatest planes that never was. And it's ironic, a lot of the great planes that were not built are of, I'll say crowned, I mean UK, Canada, Australia, you know, all of the Commonwealth. It was the Fairey Rotodyne.
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
The rotary that,
yeah.
That was a just to me. And by the way, that concept's coming back.
Really?
Apparently, I don't know how much energy is behind it, but tilt rotors come with a built-in series of headaches. While we're on that, one of the best things about my job is I get to fly with all these military guys that flew all this different kind of hardware. Uh-oh, you froze up again. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah. I don't know if you can hear me.
Oh boy, I think we got disconnected.
No, I can hear you.
Oh, there you go. You're back. All right. One of the great things about my job is I fly with these military guys that flew Cobras, Chinooks, jets, the works. You listen to them, you learn so much because there's just a reservoir of knowledge. And of course, none of it's classified or anything, but like most people, I see the Osprey and I think, oh, this is a miraculous vehicle and do all these great things to replace the helicopter. Now, in fairness, the guys who were saying this were helicopter guys, right? They're like, hold on, let me tell you about the flip side of the coin. As anyone in aviation or owns a boat or a car knows, something gives, you know. If you want it to go faster, you're going to burn more gas. You want more fuel, it's heavier now. You need more, that kind of trade-off, right? What do they call it? The rocket equation.
Right.
And so anyway, there's some stuff about the Osprey that doesn't make the brochure. Now you realize it has shorter blades than a helicopter, so they have to turn faster. In other words, it puts down a lot more downdraft. And with those big separated side-by-side rotors, it has a very large footprint. You know, you can get a Huey into a drop zone or a landing zone that you can't get an Osprey into.
Right.
These guys are telling me this. And there's just a lot about it that you don't realize that thing is just really working hard the whole time. It's now, it can go fast and can do a lot of great stuff. But imagine this: Think about the downwash from a helicopter. If you want to believe what I was told, you just multiply that times 3. Now you're out over the water trying to lower a cable down to some down pilot.
You just get,
and you see how much. Yeah, exactly. It's just like he's like there's a price to be paid for that performance. The maintenance costs are high. The thing that kind of troubles me about it is that the engines are geared to one another through a pretty heavy mechanism. It's a lot of weight. It's just not necessarily the most cost-effective weight, not money-wise, but maintenance and weight-wise. Something like the Rotodyne, which is really just a conventional helicopter with engines that will make it go forward.
Right.
I mean, it had the tip jets. They probably wouldn't go with the tip jets like they had before they found into the system, or maybe they would. There's a lot of ways to do it. But since it's auto-rotating in forward flight, and if you do have to, whatever you use to fire the rotors up, you can still hover it. But you still have long, big conventional helicopter blades, so you're not really having to, put that huge downwash, and you're keeping a single rotor arc, which keeps the footprint smaller. And a lot of people don't realize, if you look, the Rotodyne didn't have tail rotor, didn't need one, because those 2 engines, they can be moved back and forth.
Stabilize it, yeah.
Offset the anti-torque. And that brings up the next thing I didn't know. The Army Chinook, and you saw a little bit of this in that movie, I think it was American Sniper, where they're flying the Chinooks at high altitude, which they were not made for. One of the guys I'm flying with flies the big Marine Corps Sea Knight. And he was telling me that the Chinooks could actually go higher and faster, because he said it's not a power issue. It's not even a blade issue. What happens is when you get in the thin air, the air gets thin and the anti-torque rotor starts losing authority. And no matter how fast forward you go, you can't keep the tail from trying to swing around on you. But the Chinook doesn't have any torque rotor.
Right.
So for aerodynamic reasons, it can go higher and faster. Of course, it's got a bigger footprint and everything, but just you learn these kinds of things from these guys you just wouldn't think about. And the best comment ever made. Well, one of my FOs, he's a captain now, retired Air Force light colonel, and he'd flown Cobras in the Army before he went to fly in the Air Force. He flew the Stealth, the 15, and he even got to do one of those officer exchange programs with the Navy, so he got to fly the F-18 and get carrier qualified, which is rare for an Air Force officer. Yeah. And he looks like a fighter pilot, straight jaw, high cheekbones,
right out of central casting, eh?
Exactly what I thought I was having. He's right out of central casting, and I'm like, God, he pissed me off sometimes.
Sometimes God gives with both hands,
But he takes back, because one day he was sitting there just sneezing uncontrollably. He has really bad hay fever. I'm like, so you're not perfect, Superman. I found your kryptonite. Yeah, I'm not above a little petty envy.
All you have to do is buy him some flowers.
Here, feel better, get well. Is a twirl in my mustache. But anyway, he was done. I think it was, I forget where it was, Yugoslavia. When they're doing the air the suppression missions over there. And I was talking to him and said, well, the 15, you guys have a weather radar or not? And he's like, no, we got, they have the huge radar up there. It's really looking for airplanes, but they can tell about weather. I said, well, did you run that thing cold or hot? He goes, oh, no, you got the radar up. You want to know what's going around you. And I said, yeah, but that means the enemy can see you when your radar's on. And without batting an eye and with no sense of irony or self-doubt, a fighter pilot, I said, that means the enemy can see you. Who cares? You're driving an Eagle. I was like, that should be a tattoo.
Got a point. He's got a point.
I was like, you need fighter pilots to be confident, man. And I'm kind of like, bring it on.
Yep. Oh yeah. Well, that's really. I mean, you talk about the right stuff. I mean, that's part of the whole thing.
And we're going into West Palm, and of course, typical lazy airline pilots on. We're in the pattern, and we're beaming the numbers, just going to shoot the whole thing. And they just go, airline 123, you're the only traffic. You're clear to land. And I'm like, okay. And I start to dial in, just push button flying. And he looks at me, same guy, and gives me this beautiful VFR day. You're not going to fly the plane. I mean, you got clearance. It is so on. Everything off. flaps one, gear down, hang on, watch this. You know,
Oh,
keep it genteel, but he was like, that's more like it. And John, I swear, as God is my witness, airlines have had to put out safety memos about guys not hand flying enough because they're just it's a perishable skill. It atrophies.
oh, absolutely. No, absolutely. In fact, a guy I play hockey with, he's I think he's first officer on a Dreamliner.
Oh, that's a nice ride.
Yeah, and he was saying like that's why like AC at least if you have a break of I think it's more than like 5 or 6 days, they schedule a sim for you.
It's with us. It's three landings in 90 days, I think.
I can't remember what it was, but I was impressed. I didn't even think they'd put you in a sim if you're flying, but no, they keep them really trying nice and fresh. He's supposed to take me to the sim actually here because he said he's going to try and book a time in like about 2, 3 in the morning. Because I took him out to the racetrack. I don't know if you know that.
It comes down for maintenance, so it's available. Yeah.
Yeah, and what's really interesting though, because I don't know if I told you this, but I actually drove race cars for 20 years.
No, you didn't.
Yeah, F2000s. Now, don't be too impressed. I was so good, I paid them. And the way it happened was very very much through friends. This is why I'm concerned about your hip. I had cancer. Yeah, Hodgkin's lymphoma when I was 32.
Oh my gosh, one of our dearest friends passed from that about 20 years ago.
Oh geez, well I had
a great model builder too.
Ah, crap. It's it's funny because you tell people you have cancer and then they realize it's not one of those mamby-pamby little cancers. It could kill you. I mean,
yeah, I'm all too aware.
Right, and that's one of the reasons I retired at 44, because it's the same reason rock stars marry supermodels because they can.
Mm-hmm.
and it's no joke, and I'm sure you're realizing this. Every day is a bloody gift.
It is. The older you get, the more I realize that.
Yeah, and that's no joke. And what's really terrible is that you can tell people that and they sort of process it, but until they experience it, they don't know. Anyway, long story short, through business, one of my clients was Molson Sports and Entertainment, who are the promoters of the Toronto Molson Indy.
Is that Molson beer people or?
Yeah. They owned the rights for a while. Now they sold it off to I don't know who the hell owns it now, but they're screwing it up. But that's another story. Anyway, so I got to hang out with the players guys. So I'm going to show you something here. If you take a look at my helmets here, those are my helmets.
There you go. I see them. Yeah.
So the bottom one is I'll tell you the story. My first racing suit was given to me by a driver called Patrick Carpentier, who drove for players. And I got to meet him, Alex Tagliani, Greg Moore, all those guys. And so Tag found out that I was driving, and he said, "Oh, well, I got to give you a suit." So he signed one shoulder, Tag signed the other. And through my client, he said, if you don't wear this, if I see it on eBay, I will find you.
Yeah.
So I wear it. And when I used to race with the guys I raced with, and honestly, it was kind of like pickup basketball or pickup hockey. There were 8 of us. I called us the more money than talent group.
Uh-huh.
The only problem was sometimes to fill out the grid, they'd put kids in the racing school there who would just kick our ass.
Well, they're young, got lightning fast reflexes,
yeah,
aggressive.
Exactly. And one time, one of the kids was James Hinchcliffe.
Okay.
Who's still driving IndyCar right now. Great kid, really, really good kid. Anyway, my client also got me that helmet, and that helmet was actually from a driver named Stéphane Prou. He drove Formula 3000, which is now the equivalent of Formula 2 in Europe. Anyway, he perished in '93. I got to meet his driving coach. That's why I have 2 helmets.
Okay.
At a race event at Mosport. And my buddy said, "Hey, you John's got one of Stéphane's helmets." And this guy, crusty French Canadian guy, and he just looked at me and went, "Bullshit. You got any pictures?" I went, "Yeah." And I showed him the picture. I showed him the picture of me in the car. The man started weeping. He was, and he looked at me and he said, "You should not be wearing that." I said, "I know it was Stéphane's." He goes, "No, it's from 1991. Something hits you in the head, you're gonna die."
Yeah, it's good they get old. We got when I got my motorcycle license, even though I've been riding motorcycles for years, Florida Institute, I had to go to a class. And the guy gave us the whole thing on helmets, how they get old. If you drop it one time, get a new one. Because they're only good for one impact.
That's it. Well, that's just it. Motorcycle helmets are one event, one impact. Motorsport helmets, like for racing, one incident, multiple impacts. That's why they're so expensive. So While we're in the pits, he gets on the phone to Bell Helmets. He measures my head and orders me a brand new helmet. And this is coming from Belgium because it's an IndyCar helmet. It's carbon fiber.
Mm-hmm.
So he goes, you know, when you'll get an email and a delivery. Okay, fine. So I get the email. Well, it's a $3,000 helmet, so it's $350 through customs.
My head isn't worth that much.
So I thought, okay, you know what, 350, I'll take it. So I email him and say, thank you very much. And by the way, you know, this is what duty was. He phones me right away. He goes, don't pay it. He goes, do you want the box? No. Okay. I'm having it shipped to my office in Los Angeles. I'll bring it back to you as carry on next week. So out of tribute to Stefan Ploux. Now, Stefan Ploux was the king of the cars that I drove, the Formula 2000 cars. He was the best in Canada. So I had it vintage painted to match the other helmet. And that's what I raced with. So the really interesting thing is when I was racing, I used to walk out for the morning warm up and scare the crap out of everybody because I'd be wearing my player's crap. And then, honest to God, and then I'd stop and people would go, "Hey, nice gifts."
when you did nothing about the crusty French, but I have got to share this with you.
Oh yeah, go for it.
I had when I was at the regionals at Mesa Airlines, there were 3 Frenchmen there. No, I'm sorry, 4. One was my roommate, and they were completely different. My roommate, Joel, was the Hollywood stereotype.
Another one out of central casting.
Extremely suave, chronic womanizer, on his 4th wife, and he would and being in Panama City, Florida, or someplace like that, you know. And I'm from that part of the country, so let's be honest, just redneck girls, okay? And I ain't saying that with any disrespect,
no.
But they are what they are. We is what we is. And they'd hear that French accent, and they would freaking melt. And he would be like, hold on, did you hear that?
Yeah.
That's my wife.
Oh, okay. I'm probably keeping you.
Well, anyway, real quick, I'll just add, he would talk to me. He would go, "You see, Max, the women, they love me because I am Joel, and it is the way of things." And he wasn't even kidding. Then we had a captain that, thank God, I didn't have to fly with, who had a lightning fast temper. And he would scream and yell about the littlest things, just a cliche like the angry French chef type. We had another guy who went on to work for the FAA, Ben, who is the most even-keeled, well-balanced guy. Just, you know, is like just the nicest guy you could meet. Good family man. And I'm like, well, you're like the flip side of the Joel coin. But the other one was my FO, and he was kind of a mix.
Yeah.
But we're going into Montreal, and of course the radio, they're speaking in French. Or so I thought. So le gauche, and I'm like, what's it mean? Means the left. You know, oh, so it says, and I went, man, and thank God I'm the captain, not the FO. He'd probably beaten me, but I'm like, God, I wish they'd stop speaking French, speak English instead of French. And he just lost it. They are not speaking French. They are speaking Canadian. I speak French. And he just went off. And when it was over, he was just perfectly normal. Like, okay.
So I take it he was a France.
He was Normandy. He was French, and he was like that. And I go, well, I guess the French Canadian accent's kind of like the way the Brits hear American English. Or
well, no,
like
it's actually French Canadian is like a different language. So, for example, potato is pomme de terre, right? Not in Quebec. Okay. It's patate. There's no such French word as patate.
Okay. That would explain it. It's almost like, I guess it's more like a Creole.
Well, it's basically French that never really evolved from the 1700s. But you know that there are 2 French islands in the mouth of the St. Lawrence, Saint-Pierre and Miquelon, right, that are still sovereign French soil. Yeah. So I know you're going to
get in trouble, like in Canada and the U.S. I can swim to those islands. They have to extradite me.
That's
so I have that coin in my hip pocket, baby.
I know you're a comedy fan, so you probably appreciate this. But I don't know if you can see these T-shirts here from SCTV.
Yeah.
They're all signed by John Candy.
Oh, Man, that is the late great John Candy.
Now, I was
My nickname in my family is Uncle Buck.
there you go. So just to let you know the hierarchy of our family, I was in Second City in their workshop for 2 years. I got offered to be in their road company. I refused because I was doing films and making too much money doing films. My wife met John Candy at and this was just before we met, at it was a charity event essentially. So she bid on a signed T-shirt from John Candy. It was $20. So this is 1983. She went up to him and he went,
"Oh, they charge you more than that if you buy the T-shirt. You got to pay more than that just to get the signature nowadays."
Remember, this is Canada.
Oh yeah, sure.
So she went up to get, and he said, "Oh, here you go." I said, "Oh, you just can't have one. Here, have two. You know what? Three's lucky. Oh, well, 4. She got 4. And the stuff he signed, he was a wonderful man. And he signed things like, "Thanks for the acting lessons, John Candy." Like I can read them. Here's the I think. Oh, thanks for watching SCTV. P.S. Your check is in the mail. And all
I'll tell you my John Candy story. When I went in the Army, I went to Fort Knox, Kentucky for basic training. And about a year later, they filmed the movie Stripes.
Yeah.
And when I was I think it was at the base theater watching, and I went, "Hey, that's the reception center I went to." And I was there, and I used to phone home from those phone booths right behind, back when the world had phone booths, and everything. And his character in that movie, to me, was the highlight of the movie. Well, let me see what you got. Oh, okay. Well, I'd bet the whole thing, but that's me. I'm an aggressive guy. Well, you see, you lost, but I mean. By the way, that the dummy that he was taking advantage of, that was his dummy buddy, was John Deal, who was Zito on Miami Vice.
That's right. Right. Well, the other thing too is, like, I never got to meet, my wife got to meet him twice, but I'll show you pictures of my wife. You'll understand why. But what's really interesting, the people I talked to, one of my favorite stories about him was when he was working with Maureen O'Hara on, what was a really bad movie with, was it Mariel Hemingway? The hell was it called?
A good movie?
It was okay, but anyway, so they shot part of it in Toronto, and so he had a trailer, and Maureen O'Hara didn't. So on the first day of shooting, he went up to the director and said, "Do you know who that is? Like, she was in The Quiet Man." And he said, "John, we're really sorry. We just don't have the budget."
Best friend of John Wayne.
Yeah, and
she's the one that got Congress to mint that coin, John Wayne American, just before his death.
Right.
I mean, Maureen O'Hara was Hollywood royalty.
So the way the way I heard the story is, he said, "You know what? Give her my trailer. I don't need a trailer." The next day, a second trailer shows up.
Yeah. That sounds like the kind of guy you sort of get an instinct about people.
Yeah.
And it just say he was such a loss. I know he smoked and he was overweight, but
he also had family. He also had family history. His dad passed of a heart attack at 35.
Okay, yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
When John Panette passed away, he was, he'd been extremely heavy his whole life and had a lot of bad habits, and he died at 41. And then I was watching an interview with one of his friends, and apparently, I hate to say this because I really love his work, but he was like, "Well, nobody could do coke like John," and I was like, "Oh, well, that."
I have to say that, because I was okay as an actor, but Truman Capote put it best. He said, if you're too intelligent, you won't be a good actor.
that actually makes sense.
Yeah, and there's a great interview on Carson where he talks about, about why Marlon Brando is so good, because he's dumb as Johnny. He's as dumb as a stump.
Let me give you an example of that. The great actor Peter Sellers.
Yeah. Oh, he was totally messed up.
Not only that, apparently they said when he wasn't in character, he had no personality. He was like just a blob of clay.
Yeah, well, being there was
acting as someone to be anyone.
Right. Well, being there was probably as close to what he really was like.
Oh, okay. Here's some trivia for you then.
Okay.
What's the one? Even though he faked to get out of it, pretty sure he faked it to get out of it. In the one of probably my favorite movie, Dr. Strangelove.
Yeah.
What character was he supposed to play that he was feared playing and got out of playing?
Oh, I know this. Hang on. Oh, it was a Slim Pickens character.
Major T.K. King Kong.
Right. Yeah.
He was afraid he said, "There's no way I can pull off a Texas accent."
Right.
Now, did you ever hear the story about when Slim Pickens showed up on set?
No.
Okay. You know, he was from, I think, Oklahoma or Texas. He was a real cowboy.
Yeah.
And he walked in. He was wearing his buckskin with the tassels and his turkey platter belt buckle and cowboy boots and jeans and Stetson. And all the British crew were impressed. Like, see, that guy's a dedicated actor. He stays in character all the time. You know, the whole movie. And they're like, he never broke character on or off camera. And it wasn't until it was over, they're like, the cast party. He's kind of like, boys, this is the way I am. I'm not even acting.
That's a great movie.
Oh, I think I am being summoned by she who must be obeyed. As
well, listen, what we can do, I won't post this unless you want to post it.
You can if you want to. I haven't said anything I'm afraid and ashamed of. I'll leave that up to you.
Okay.
If you do, send me a link and I'll put it up on my next one. Hey, there's a Breakfast with John. By the way, I wasn't going to say it at first, but I was like, for people in the model business, you got the best last name. If you have a kid, you got to name him Model.
Well, you know what? It's funny because our daughter, her first name is Emma, but we had a list when my wife was expecting of names that we couldn't have, and one of them was Model, tire repair. One of my favorites was for a girl, you couldn't have Faye because that's not a name, that's advice.
So wrong. All right, I got to run. I will talk at you later, and just anytime because I got to go to physical therapy in a while. But I got a lot of time on my hands. Happy to chat with you.
Okay, well, same here. I really enjoyed this. I hope you did.
Oh, I did very much. Do it again.
All right, great.
Take care.
Take care, man.
I hope you enjoyed watching. If you did, please leave a comment, like, and subscribe.